Germany's coronavirus infection numbers are rising rapidly. The government is warning that emergency rooms are filling up. But German political leaders have been at odds over how to handle the crisis. A meeting of state and national leaders scheduled for next Monday has been canceled due to disagreements. Some states want to loosen regulations, while Chancellor Angela Merkel and others are calling for tougher restrictions. Health Minister Jens Spahn today warned that the situation in Germany was serious and called for a unified national approach and tougher restrictions.
In order to reduce these numbers, we need consistent and, if possible, nationwide measures. Many citizens also recognize the need to break this wave of infections with additional measures. Many polls show this very clearly. At any rate, citizens have a realistic view of the situation and the gravity of the situation. And the majority are in favor of stricter rules. A lockdown is needed to break the current wave.
Let's talk about all of this with our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane. Hi, Melinda. As we heard, the infection numbers in Germany are rising at the moment, and intensive care units are also filling up. So how serious is the situation in Germany?
It's grave, as the health minister and also the head of the country's Center for Disease Control said today. We are in the midst of a third wave. We're seeing numbers edging close to the highest numbers we have seen in Germany. And both said that we are also seeing more and more serious cases amongst younger people, even teenagers and children. And as the head of the Center for Disease Control put it, every day we don't bring these numbers down is a day that has cost in human life. And as you said, intensive care units increasingly stretched, also personnel in intensive care units increasingly burdened. So all of that makes it imperative to act.
Meanwhile, this comes as there's a battle between state and national leaders on how to proceed. And we're hearing that the German government is trying to change that now. Tell us more.
Indeed. There have been battles because, according to the German Constitution, health policy is first and foremost in the hands of the federal states. And there are wide variations among different regions in Germany. We have regions where there are just 37 new cases per 100,000 residents, and others where there are nearly 300 new cases for the same number of residents. So clearly a lot of variation. Now, the heads of the federal states actually agreed on a plan in March that was supposed to have different levels of restrictions depending on how high the level of infection in specific regions were. But there's a lot of latitude for interpretation in this plan, and some regions with high rates of infection have still tried to sort of find a middle ground where, like in Berlin, they test more, but they allow people still to go shopping, and they have only a limited restriction on contact. So the federal government has now said it wants to get a more reliable, more automatic, clearer plan for how to proceed based on levels of infection. And it is going to apparently revise Germany's federal law to make that possible. The interesting thing is the federal states apparently have agreed to this. So we will see action next week to put more control in the hands of the federal government and get a more reliable, more automatic plan for how to proceed.
Our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane, reporting there for us. Thank you so much. Let's check in now on some other developments in the pandemic. India's coronavirus crisis continues to worsen. Record numbers were registered for the third day in a row. Japan has tightened restrictions on bars, restaurants, and events in Tokyo and several other areas amid a growing outbreak just weeks after loosening them. And the city is due to host the Olympic Games in July. And French medical authorities are expected to recommend that people aged under 55 who have already received one dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine should get a different type of vaccine as a second shot. New York City's cultural scene is seeing some glimmers of hope after more than a year of pandemic restrictions. The city's world-renowned theaters and concert halls probably will not open before September, but with millions of residents now vaccinated against the coronavirus, some venues are being allowed to reopen, and the excitement is catching on.
New Yorkers are finally getting the opportunity again to pursue one of their favorite pastimes, standing in line.
I'm really excited for the city to become the city again, as we always knew it would.
It's pretty exciting. You can feel the energy.
Okay, they're not actually excited about queuing up, but rather that after a year of Zoom meetings and elbow bumps, they're about to see a live show at one of the city's most iconic entertainment venues, the Comedy Cellar in Manhattan's Greenwich Village.
Comedy Cellar, how you feeling?
The Comedy Cellar has hosted nearly all the trade's greats over the decades. But like most venues, it's been shuttered for more than a year. Now it's open again, but at just 33% capacity in accordance with New York's regulations. No COVID-19 test is required to enter, and neither are masks when seated. The club's owner is cautiously optimistic the venue will stay open now for good.
I don't expect things to turn bad now. They're vaccinating people very, very quickly. I think it's going to be okay. I hope it's okay, and if it's not, I hope they'll shut us down again. They should do what they need to do.
Despite rising case numbers, the risk of aerosols and virus variants, the comedians and the audience breathe a sigh of relief. And yeah, there will be jokes about the pandemic.
For the comedians, for me, it's cathartic to talk about this stuff, to just say what I was going through. And then I think for the audience, it's not just them identifying and relating. That is one level, and that's huge too, but also just being with other people, physically being around people, around your peers in some social setting, that itself is important.
And gradually, there are more and more places for New Yorkers to do that. Restaurants are allowed to host patrons indoors at half capacity. Most of the city's museums have been open for months. And now, major sports venues are also welcoming fans again. Madison Square Garden, home to professional sports teams like the New York Knicks and the New York Rangers, is open again at 10% capacity. But to get in, you have to have either a recent negative COVID test or be fully vaccinated. New York has just launched a new app that will help users prove their health status, and that authorities say will make it easier for New Yorkers and visitors to access venues and activities as the city slowly opens back up. As tourists are returning to New York, a so-called vaccination passport could be an important tool to bring back major attractions like Broadway. Most theaters here are saying they won't reopen until all seats can be filled. They're hoping sometime in the fall or winter. But for now, it's spring, and New Yorkers are enjoying their newfound freedom in the sun after a gloomy year in isolation.
This is our first day in 1 year coming back to downtown, so we are kind of excited seeing so many people.
I'm a musician, I'm a music teacher. I went back to teaching in person a few days a week after a year of being on Zoom. I don't think I'm ready to sit in a full concert hall. However, I am going to give a concert in May in a 1/3 filled concert hall. So I'm looking around here, my mind is blown seeing how many people there are. I haven't seen this many people in one spot in a year and a half.
Scientists are warning people not to let their guard down. The pandemic, they say, is far from over. And if cases keep rising, scenes like these could quickly again become a thing of the past.